All right, everybody, we are getting started. Yes, we are about 2 minutes late because we was cutting it up, and that's just what it's going to be at this point in time. I am Danny Terrell. I am your host. I am one of the directors of the congregation. This is when I move, you move, or when you move, I move, however you want to say it. This is a conversation. I started these conversations because of everything that happened with COVID. That's number one. Number two, there was a lot of statements from organizations, mainly white-led arts organizations, in solidarity with Blackness. And there was also a bunch of conversations throughout the country, throughout the world, with Black artists, especially dancers. And I would say dancers, singers, theater artists, where we were saying enough is enough. The thing that I was missing from those conversations were voices that were in Seattle. Our experience in Seattle is much like that across the world. We also have a very unique experience because Black folks out here make up very little of the population. So I wanted to center Seattle in these conversations. Our first conversation happened, I believe, June 27th. That is online. You can go to Danny Terrell on YouTube and see that conversation. This conversation that we're having today, it is about hip hop dance in Seattle. Conversations in Black. So we are talking to mainly Black folks about their experience in Seattle. What you will find are dancers that have various entry points into the hip hop dance scene in Seattle. So it is not the typical break dancers or anything like that. I wanted to bring a broader perspective to what hip hop dance was, especially in Seattle. Before we get started, I'm going to introduce one person, Naomi Makalata Bregan. Naomi will be doing our land acknowledgement, so I'm going to bring them into the room. Naomi, hello. I'm going to take myself out of here so we can start the land acknowledgement.
We gather together today to acknowledge that we are living and working on unceded ancestral lands, including those of the Coast Salish peoples, including Suquamish, Squamish, Nuiamot, and Muckleshoot nations, as well as Tongva land, and all the shared waters of all tribes and bands, named and unnamed. We are grateful to live in these lands and commit to solidarity in struggle for Indigenous sovereignty. We pay respects to elders past and present. The land acknowledgement reminds us of our connections and indebtedness to the people's original place names and all our human kin where we live and work. Saying their names and learning their histories calls their spirits to life. Please put your hip hop ancestors into the chat, those who inspire you and those who move you. Thanks.
Thank you, Naomi. I'm going to leave you on the screen because we're just going to start introducing our panelists. First up, Naomi. And then again, as Naomi said, if you have comments, things that you want to say, questions you want to ask, if you are on Facebook, place it in the chat. If you are on YouTube, you can place it in the chat also. And we will get to those questions as much as we can. We have a full panel. We have a full list of topics we want to talk about. But my first question as I introduce the panelists is, what are you bringing into the space, or who are you bringing into the space? Naomi, go.
Well, I just love to bring truth into the space, and really speaking from my truth, from my center. As I wrote, when Danny asked me to join this panel, I know I can't be all that's ultimately concerned with generating Black social life. So I'm very grateful to be able to be in conversation with folks about this question, this ongoing question of what is Black social life and how is hip hop dance intimately concerned with it.
Thank you, Naomi. Next, I'm bringing in my partner in crime, my partner in creativity, the other co-director of the congregation, Majin Mike O'Neill. How are you today?
Hi.
What are you, or who are you bringing into the space today?
One, I am bringing myself fully. So I'm not going to just talk about the good experiences I've had in hip hop, but also the bad. And then I'm also bringing in all the teachers I've had, friends, and those that continue to inspire me and that I continue to learn from in hip hop.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Next, we are bringing in the one, the only, the fabulous Taqueed. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm actually on vacation right now, so I'm bringing the most relaxed version of myself. I'm bringing freestyle. I'm bringing connection. I'm bringing honesty. I'm bringing truth. Um, I'm bringing my blackness. I'm bringing my individuality, and I'm bringing my ownership of what this is. Like hip hop culture comes from us. Hip hop music, hip hop dance. That's ours. And we have to make sure that we know what the word is. So that's what I'm bringing.
Awesome. Thank you, Taqueed. I'm gonna save them for last because it's just so cute. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. Next, I'm going to bring in one of my favorite people, Ron Gatsby from the Purple Lemonades. How are you today? And who are you? And what are you bringing into the space?
I am fabulous today. So good. Back in my family's home. Today, I am bringing with me my cousin Andrea, my cousin Tati, and all my aunties and moms and grandmas and just all the Black women in my family who first taught me dance. That is who I'm bringing today, because being back home has made me just love them so much more.
Awesome. Thank you, Ron. Next up, and this is why I was like, it was so cute, because, we're in quarantine, so when I see people together, I'm like, it's so cute. I miss these people. Sylvia Okafor and William, I always get your last name wrong, William. Say it. Where's
Yep, like, where's my car? Where's my?
I'm just wrong. That's it. What are you all bringing into the space, or who are you all bringing into the space?
Yeah, I think I'm just bringing myself. I'm bringing my truth. I'm bringing me as a Black woman in this space and in this hip hop space where we're allowed to create and express and connect. So yeah, just me and my experiences. Nothing crazy.
I am bringing my truth and definitely my honesty. I think I'm right in line with Mike. I just want to talk about my total all experiences with hip hop, good, bad, ugly. And then, my second would be experience, just my own personal story and how I've experienced both hip hop as a separate entity and then also as dance, right? Community.
Awesome. Thank you all for being a part of this panel. I'm excited to talk to all of y'all about this. And again, everybody, so the Danny Terrell about to come out. So Danny Terrell is from Detroit. Y'all can hold your own panels. If y'all got issues with who's on this panel, y'all can do your own stuff. For real. That's all I'm gonna say on that. Because sometimes we bring in the same people talking about the same thing that gives no other perspective. And these people on this panel, they will give you a different perspective. As we know, hip hop dance is very much wide. And it did not start off that way. And I say wide, it's expansive, but actually it's also something that is, in my opinion, extremely empty. Of the roots of the culture, especially when you talk about Blackness, especially when living in Seattle and you're talking about Blackness and how Blackness is erased from most hip hop areas and spaces in Seattle. So all my conversations center around lifting up Black voices and Black bodies and Black people and our experiences. And I'm someone that is a part of hip hop dance. Hip hop dance started in the 70s and 80s. And again, the 70s, 70s, 60s, let me say that. And it was about community. It did not start in the studio. It was not about a studio. It wasn't even called hip hop dance until the 80s. It's a street dance. It is a dance that people built out of protest. It is a dance that people built out of community, out of gathering, of wanting to be together. That is a very blanket history. You can also look up history and talk to different people about the history that were actually around, that actually know about the history. But it is not this thing that was brought up in the studio. And it's not about knocking anything, but it's really about having a conversation. about community, about Blackness and Latinx folks. It also started within those communities in New York. Youth gathered. Youth were a part of the community as it is now, part of the culture. And we'll jump into that more. There's other people that have history, that know history much better than I am. But I wanted to honor the fact that we are not talking about studio hip hop. We are not talking about what hip hop is now. I want to get back to the community roots of hip hop. So with that being said, to the panelists, the first thing that I want to talk about, being in Seattle, the thing that I noticed in this, and we're just going to go there because that's just what I do. Blackface. I think in a lot of arenas, yes, I'm going there immediately. Let's not waste any time. I personally believe that when I go to different places, blackface shows up. Blackface isn't this thing that happened many, many years ago. It's still happening now, especially within a lot of the Seattle hip hop street dance club scene arenas. Blackface is this idea of making a mockery out of Black folks. Blackface, white performers used to put on Black makeup and paint their lips white to have these big features, and they were making buffoons of Black folks. And you may say, like, in hip hop dance, like, we're not making buffoons of Black folks, but how does blackface show up? So that's the first question. And sorry, I'm not being extremely articulate right now, but it's a lot. So I'm going to start off with everybody like, I don't want to go first. I can see it on their faces. I can see it on their faces. Taquise, I'm gonna start with you. How does blackface show up?
I think the interesting thing about blackface in American culture is the fact that we have such tangible evidence of the history of it. You know, there's video footage of those early, vaudeville shows where white actors would dress up in blackface and try to mimic the sort of culture and the nature of Black people and their movement. I think with regard to hip hop today, how that shows up is kind of similar in the essence of the elements of it. It's like you're trying to mimic, what it is. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have a full grasp, a full understanding of where it comes from. And I think, not knowing the history, not having the knowledge, not spreading the knowledge, and just doing the movement is doing a disservice to the people that created it.
Awesome. Thank you. That's the first start. Who's next? Raise your hand. I don't want to call on you. This is not school. Everybody like, I don't want to take it. I don't want to take it. Go ahead. Majin.
One way that I'd say it shows up a lot, specifically in breaking. And this is something that I've heard someone else say, and I was just like, wow, that's like super real. It was probably Moncel. But it's how breakers nowadays are trying to be breakers from the 60s, 70s, 80s. They're trying to have the same clothes. They're trying to battle the same way when that's not what their lived experience was or is, especially if they're from outside of New York, outside of the US, they're from different countries, but they're still trying to put on this persona that they're a Black or Latinx person from the Bronx in the 70s when it's 2020 and they're white. So it's, for me, that's a clear way that people are trying to do blackface without actually doing blackface, because they're not being their authentic selves. They're trying to be something else. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And blackface it's a posturing also. So you see different postures, and different postures mean different things inside of dance also, especially when you're talking about Black folks. Different signs, different what's up, different things like that. They mean different things. And if you don't have the working knowledge of what that is a form of blackface. If you are imitating what you think Black women and femmes are, and you are going into the idea of the most hood and the most ghetto, those images are blackface. So just to like start to open up that conversation a little bit more. Let's go to Sylvia or Will next.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, I feel like blackface also comes into play if you're trying to act like the Black people you see on TV or in videos and things like that. Like if you really don't know any Black people and are not a part of the culture and have no connection to it whatsoever, and the only thing you see is what you see on TV, sorry, TV is not real enough. And I feel like if that's what you're imitating, you're just imitating a caricature of what Black people are, and that's essentially blackface in my book.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think for me, like it shows up in, Ron actually said this before, it's very much like, it looks like borrowed clothes. Like it looks like someone's wearing like coats that don't fit for them, hats. So like on a literal sense, right? In a sense of like dressing how they did back then versus just having your own style now, but then also in a sense of what will, you know,
when they do the moves.
Yeah,
stuff.
like it within choreography or within like, you know, like for example, light feet, right? Light feet is like a community-based style. Like, yes, there are moves, but you learn the moves because everybody knows what those moves are. And I think hip hop is very much this. I mean, yeah, it's just in it too. But like, I think at specifically hip hop level, it's that's the thing of if you weren't in it and you didn't grow up in it or you didn't experience it, then you're
what are you taking from?
Yeah, you're like acting it, you know what I mean? Like you're like putting on a persona, a character. Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you both. Naomi, let's go to you next with this question. Wait, are we ready for Naomi? Okay, we ready. I think we ready. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a very, it's like a huge, I feel there's so many places that one can go with blackface, but I'm going to specifically say what I think is specific to hip hop dance, which is that, you know, can you have blackface without the paint? Because blackface was about, you know, applying black paint to your skin. And I feel like what we're experiencing is like, oh shit, we can actually like see someone doing blackface without actually having to put the paint on, you know, because blackface can also be something that's physicalized in our gestures. You know, it can be actually something that's heard when, you know, the whole thing that went down around Iggy Azalea, you know, basically caricaturing or taking on Black women's, like Southern Black women's accents, you know, or vocalizations. That was an example of sonic blackface. And so with hip hop, it's like we have this example of like embodied blackface. And like, and I feel like the really important thing to remember is that it's not simply like a cultural appropriation that sometimes is a word that's thrown around, but specifically it's a caricature that happens within the context of a power relation, which is that, you know, there is whiteness, there's a hierarchy in which blackness is always ejected and given no value. And so blackness can just be used for whatever ends, you know, but Black folks are essentially structurally bereft of power. Like they're, you know, they don't, Black folks don't have a position of power in that kind of relationship, you know? And so when people perform blackface, it's a way of also claiming power within this anti-Black structural system. The last thing I just wanted to say, so I'm sorry, I got a little academic there, but I did want to just let folks know that there's a really wonderful Professor Lauren Jackson who wrote a book, and I'm going to put in her URL into, well, hopefully, Danny, you can add this. But there's Lauren Jackson wrote a book called White Negroes, When Cornrows Were in Vogue and Other Thoughts on Cultural Appropriation. It just came out last year. She's a professor at Northwestern in the English department. So I definitely recommend, if you want to read more on this from folks who've really studied it, that would be a great place to start. The last thing I just wanted to say, because we are specifically talking about hip hop dance, is that I do feel that the more recent culture of competition dance, which is like it's a money earning capitalism machine right now within popular dance culture, that unfortunately, because of the way competition dance is structured around just choreography, and basically fitting moves to counts, it becomes very easy for blackface gestures to become a part of the dance, because it's just all about, okay, 5, 6, 7, 8, and let me put these cool moves. Let me reference the nene, so I'm just going to insert this move into this 5, 6, 7, 8 sequence. I mean, it's not about who is choreographing or dancing necessarily. It could be Black folks, it could be white folks, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, what happens is, because the form is based on this linear time frame, and it's all about just objectifying the moves, like what Will and Sylvia were saying about the community-based style, that social aspect of it no longer is important. It's just all about get the moves, get the counts. And so all of that context, all of the color, the conversation, do you speak this language, or are you just taking these moves? All of that context just gets erased, as if it just can easily, still be hip hop, And so I just want to say, that I feel like that's the competition dance form. It does perpetuate blackface. It's easier for blackface to basically happen because of that style, the kind of format that style operates in. Sorry, I took up a lot of space, but I just wanted to make that stuff clear. And I have to adjust my shades because.
Naomi, you know what? I love you because you are a scholar, you are an academic, and you are also part of the culture in a way that most people are not. So I just love having you on, because you always just drop some knowledge that we just like, okay, wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. Before we get to our last panelist, I want to say this to people that are viewing. Do not take this as a way to get offended, to feel like we're attacking you. This is a way for you to actually go and really think about your practices as an artist, as a dancer, whatever you do, to really think about, are you perpetuating the same racist stereotypes, or are you actually doing something to lift up and to honor Black folks in that space and Latinx folks in those spaces, or are you doing the same thing? I want to hold these conversations so you can go back and do the work for yourself. Oftentimes, we don't listen to Black folks, or we don't respect Black folks unless they are cis Black men, mainly, mostly, all the time. So for me, my world is not just cis Black men inside of dance. And it is not a particular person inside of dance. So these conversations for me is to bring different voices in, voices that you may or may not have heard of, and get their perspective so you can really think about what it is that you are doing. And not saying no one's giving me any shade or anything right now, but I really want to be clear about that, because a lot of times people walk away from these conversations feeling bad or feeling some type of way, instead of just like, oh, let me actually listen to what is being said and apply that to my practices so I can do better, so we can do better, so the space can feel much better for Black folks. And Latinx folks and women and femmes. Let's have Ron Gatsby come in and answer that last question, and then we're going to just open it up to some more.
Yeah, I think that blackface, at least as I've noticed, it shows up in hip hop through the marketing materials and how certain people are marketing classes, how they are looking to attract followers, how they are looking to grow their names. And I'm going to just paint a very broad picture, but I'm talking about everything from when certain teachers promote a class to the language that's being used in the caption. I have witnessed people go so far as to change their names to sound Blacker in an event to, I guess, I don't know if it's to appeal more to Black people or to maybe seem more Black adjacent, but it's really, really problematic. And I've seen it in Seattle, and being back home in LA, you see it, but it really just shows up in the marketing. It's almost kind of like you are trying to present as Black or as close to Black as you possibly can in efforts to attract people. And in a lot of ways, it feels like bait and switch, because when actual Black people get to those places and see no Black people, then that's going to lead to a whole other set of problems. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Ron. And I'm going to open this up. Like, if you want to answer this next question, it's not on our list, but when you walk into the different classes, spaces, performances that you all are in, and when you see, and I'm just going to call it blackface right now, when you see that show up, how has that affected you? How has that affected the space? What are your thoughts when that takes place? And again, this is for people to really start thinking about what they are doing and presenting. Just raise your hand if you want to answer the question. Everyone doesn't have to answer it. Yes, Ron.
I am automatically turned off by it, and not in a way of like I'm turned off by I am upset. I'm turned off because I'm expecting more. You know, if you are a studio owner, okay, so we're just going to start at the top. If you're a studio owner, I would have to hope that at some level you have a knowledge and understanding of dance as it pertains both to how people are learning it and a culture. And if you, as a studio owner, are cultivating a space where you don't see a lot of Black and brown people in something that there should be a lot of Black and brown people, I'm let down, because I'm just like, man, I was really expecting to come here and get this thing, and I'm not getting it. And not only am I not getting it, I don't even feel that I am welcomed in this space. And it just becomes the biggest letdown. And it gets to a point to where, you know, I won't speak for everybody, but towards the tail end of my time in Seattle, I really just didn't really want to interact with a lot of the dance community, because I just never felt like the spirit that I was looking for was going to be in those places.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ron. Anybody else want to take on that question? And if not, we can move on. Go ahead.
Could you repeat what was the question again? I'm sorry. I'm AC.
No, it's totally fine. Just how has blackface, the idea of blackface made you feel, especially in Seattle, when you go to performances or classes or battles, and this performative blackness? I don't want to be nice about the word. Let me just say blackface. I'm trying to be like performative blackness, but let's just call it what it is, because if we don't start calling the thing what it is, then people kind of just like, well, I won't perform blackness, but you're still performing blackness. So the harsh reality is that blackface has not died. Blackface has just evolved into something else. So I want to call it what it is. But for those that need performative blackness, we'll just say that for right now. But that's the question. How has that shown up for you in those spaces? Yes, to Queets.
I would like to just take it a step further from what Ron was talking about, of like the responsibility of the people who hold these classes and who they're teaching these things to, right? So if these people come to these classes, they pay this money to get, to get the goods, for lack of a better term, where are they taking that? You know what I mean? Are they taking that to the club, and trying to like look cool? They've taken that to, their own studios and trying to like, pass on this sort of like, this commodity, if you will. And like, I think, there's a huge responsibility on people who have the knowledge of a thing to make sure that who they're teaching it to are doing right by it, and I think, nowadays with social media and, our access to things, hip hop is being taken to places that it really shouldn't, especially hip hop dance, you know what I mean? And there's a responsibility, there's a knowledge that comes with that, there's a culture that comes with that, and misuse of that then can very much lead to actual real trauma, people that, should be at the forefront, like we're talking about, are not, and it's like, you begin to like create these gates, that, keep the people that created the thing out of a space, away from access and away from opportunity and safety, honestly, so again, just like piggybacking off what Ron said about people that, are teaching these things to other people, like, what are you really doing? What are you really trying to prove?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes, Will.
Actually, that definitely made me like think of something, and before like I forget it, in two ways. Like one, very uncomfortable, right? It's a very weird sense when you walk into a space, like you were saying, expecting something, and then you receive either not even close to that, or like a really cheap rip off of it. And then two, the main point is like, it takes away from the people that should be doing it, right? Like we talked about competition dances and stuff like that. It's weird because then you look at those choreographers and you're like, oh, well, like that makes sense. But then that's a whole check that could have gone to someone who is of the culture, someone who would probably turn around to give it back to the culture and to the community. And so that to me is another like where I see it and how it affects me.
This makes me think, and we'll probably transition and bounce back and forth, but you all are talking about teaching. At the university I teach at, I was approached by then the chair about bringing in some street dancers to do this residency. And the list of names, and I may have shared this story before, but the list of names that I gave her were people that were actually in the community. People that had a long standing of just like, no, they are hip hop dancers, house dancers, like this is what they do. And it wasn't what the chair wanted. The chair wanted a hybrid of someone who did modern dance, whatever that is, and hip hop dance. And then it really just made me think of just like, oh, you want a watered down version of something to make it appealing to the white folks that would come and see this, that have the money that would fund the department. And again, just having real conversations, not knocking anybody, but that's what it was. But when to Will's point, when you're just like, no, here's someone that you should be giving the money to who actually, this is what they do. From the history to the language to everything, and you pass that by for someone who does a version of that, again, you are doing a disservice. I want to jump into let's just move into classes. Maybe a few months ago or something like that, people were starting to be asked about questions about, called out about their classes, calling them hip hop classes. And there's this thing of like hip hop classes, choreography classes. And again, just to let folks know, breakdancing, synonymous with hip hop culture, locking and popping, hip hop culture, funk styles, house, vogue, whacking, more club style dancing, and I'm missing some in between. Hip hop is not putting on an Usher song and bopping to the left, bopping to the right, and giving sass. That's not what hip hop is. And again, not trying to be shady, but you're calling I don't call my classes hip hop classes. I don't even like calling them street styles or anything like that, because it's just like, oh, what am I really teaching? Which made me go back and do some research myself to understand what it is that I'm teaching. But now people are like, we can't do it that we're doing a disservice, and you've been doing a disservice. The other thing that I'm going to say, any of those dances never relied on ballet to support them. We'll get to that later. It never relied on, they can stand on their own without a turn, a kick, a split, a dip in vogue, but not the classical, let's do a pirouette. Like, it does not rely on that. And again, for those people that are just like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Hip hop dance does not need ballet or any of those other Eurocentric forms of dance to be a solid dance form. It is a solid dance form. So my question for you all, because I know you all teach various ways, some of you teach, that was really long, but I just wanted to get that out. What do you all think about the, people call it the choreo scene, which I really hate that also. Personal opinion. What do you all think about, and how has your teaching changed as you understand culture more that comes from the community? Again, you really can't teach hip hop in that sense, because if you ain't in the street and if you ain't living it, you really can't teach it in that way. And I know some people are gonna be like, oh, yes, no, but you really can't teach it, because it's literally, I can be like, Ron, come over, and we in the street with Mike, and we coming up with stuff. That's hip hop dance. We're not going 5, 6, 7, 8, and now wave your hand to the left. We're just coming up with stuff. Anyway, I've talked a lot. So what are your thoughts on that, people? Anybody want to go? Will on fire tonight.
Yeah, so for me, I definitely also had like a comeback moment of like, okay, what am I actually teaching? Like not even like what are the moves necessarily, but what am I drawing from, right? Because at the end of the day, if you do that digging and you're like, you know what I teach is actually more club style or more street style, that's okay. No one told you have to teach hip hop or you have to whatever. But if you're going to teach hip hop, make sure you teach it properly. Or if you're going to teach street styles, make sure it's street styles and not turns and jazz funk, right? And so for me, like I kind of went back and did that that digging to find that it is somewhere between street styles and like hip hop. But the portions that I learned and that I like structured around hip hop are less about what like specific things you're doing and more about like, it's weird because like you said, if you didn't grow up in it, it's just not the same. And then you got this weird point where there's teachers who want to teach hip hop, but how do you teach it without teaching the community and the vibe and like like you said, like throwing steps together and getting people to just vibe. And so that to me is my focus in class, is like building that that structure of people like supporting each other and liking, that sense of community of like, oh, I really like that. That's really dope, even though it's not what I can do. How do you do that? Oh, that's cool. Whatever. Like, I like to build that foundation first. But then as far as like the movements go, like that, I feel like more street style, but that took some digging. So.
Awesome, Naomi. I feel like you want to say something.
Yeah, well, I could just speak to my experiences teaching. I mean, I taught for a long time in Oakland public schools before I moved to Seattle. I've only been here for 4 years. And I came here as a professor at the University of Washington. So it was a really different experience because in the Bay Area, I more was like community-based, youth dancer, educator, and working with youth, and then working in the university context. And Danny raised some of those issues of the institution and what it expects, especially in a dance department. I don't teach in a dance department, so I have a lot more freedom than I feel like folks who do teach in a dance department. And these dance departments, honestly, especially if you're at a school where it's a high tuition, like a private institution, the institution wants to professionalize these students. They want the students to feel like they are getting what they're paying, and honestly, you can't put a price on Black culture, and so I feel like what we're talking about here is the, oh yes, thanks. I had a little affirmation from the boat out on the ocean. But, it's like, we're talking about the difference between a culture that is moving and changing. And, it's always something new. Hip hop isn't concerned with everything that we're talking about, because hip hop is about social life, and it's always moving. It's always changing. It's always about what's on to the next. It's always about innovating. It's get light one day, beat your feet the next day, footworking the next day, juking, jacking, you know what I mean? It's always moving and adapting, and it doesn't really care about our human problem, our Western problems, So in the context of the institution and the university, these folks want to tell you, okay, we want you to be able to produce dancers who can get contemporary dance jobs. And so they don't care about the cultural life of hip hop. What they want is a contemporary dancer who can do some hip hop moves and can then get jobs, in more of an industry or a commercial sense or the concert stage sense, And so for me, when and I definitely don't have the solution, I can only say what I do in class. I teach more the philosophy, and I tell my students, I can't teach you hip hop. This class is called hip hop dance because that's the marketing label. just to be real. That's a way we all can kind of come into the room and be like, oh, that's what this is. I can teach you some history. I can show you some moves. I'm not going to be able to be a master of those moves, but I can teach you what I know. I can teach you some of that, but I'm mostly going to teach you what's the philosophy behind this culture, which is about the things we've been already talking about: community, social life, conversation. What do you have to say? So a lot of times my students come in, they might have zero rhythm, like no rhythmic sense at all. For me, it's like, jump into the freestyle cipher and tell me where you're coming from. And honestly, some of the students that I have that are so far from the language of hip hop, for me, their spirit is connected to what I'm saying, because they get in that cipher and they actually try. I can tell you also, I've had students on the Seattle campus, Danny, so we could talk after this conversation, but I have had students that came into a final, where the final is, you got to get in the cipher and dance for a minute for a whole song without stop. Like, no one, you can't get out of the cipher. And they came in to the cipher for a final and gave me a straight choreography, as in they had rehearsed it count for count, and that's exactly when you know that people don't get the difference. Hip hop isn't choreography. Yes, you can do choreography. All of us, I think, at different points have been choreographers and continue to be and do that. It's just that I think everyone in this circle also gets how to freestyle and get down. And that's our first language. That's like our mother tongue from which everything else develops.
Right. Thank you, Naomi, for that. So many thoughts in my head right now about where to go. Anybody else want to answer that question? Mike, we haven't heard from you. Sylvia, Ron. Go ahead, Majan.
So many things, trying to do banners and yeah, I connect with things both Naomi and Will was saying. A lot of internal work I've had to do teaching, because I started really young, and especially since I started, I call it the choreo scene. In the choreo scene, like, no matter what, I was like, yeah, it's hip hop, it's to hip hop music, blah, blah, blah. And I've had to do internal work with myself to be like, no, that's just because it's to hip hop music, it's not the culture, it's not the dance. And part of that is just from my own feeling of being like, this doesn't feel right. And of course, the more that you actually care about a culture and something you're a part of, the more you're going to learn of its history. And doing that work for myself helped me learn more of how I wanted to teach. And I'm still constantly trying to refigure how I want to teach so I can make it as close to authentic hip hop for me as it can be. So like everybody's been saying with community, and Danny, we do this in our classes, like, we make people cipher, we make people make combinations together. We're always telling people to be authentic and not try to put on a mask of what they see in media of what hip hop is. One of the things we always do in our classes, especially for the cipher, we're like, if we see you come in and you're just trying to show off, you're not being authentic, you're not being you, you're not being hip hop. You're not speaking your voice. And with that, I feel one of the main ways that I try to make my classes as close to hip hop culture and dance as I can is bringing people's originality and their selves. Because hip hop is not about being a copy of somebody else. Never has been. There may be, of course, there is moves that everybody does, but everybody has their own take on those moves. This is why it's social dancing. And again, this is for everybody. Party grooves and stuff is all social dancing. It's all partner dancing. Just because we're not like together, which some people are at times, like it's social dancing, right? So not forcing, but pushing the aspect of, I want to see who you are. As I always say in my classes, I'm gonna give you this template of whatever moves or choreography, make it your own. Do not be a copy of me. If you're a copy of me, Just know, like, there's only one me. You can't be me. You can try to look like me. You're not going to have the same feel. It's not going to be the same. So trying, yeah, again, just pushing that authenticity, and trying to get as far away from studio ways of teaching as I can, which is like using the mirrors less, trying not to count as much. Like, I do it because as a teacher, like, you have to have different ways to teach people. But showing them that this is not how most people learn hip hop. Like, we're not gonna stand in the mirror and like everybody's been saying, like, all right, so this is 5, 6. Like, that's not. You got to catch this rhythm. You got to jump in, and if we switching moves, you just got to keep going with the flow. Put your own twist on it again. Like, make it you. And it's, again, I'm on a constant journey of trying to figure out how I want to teach to be the most respectful to the culture that I can, as well as making people understand what this culture is, and how to actually put themselves in it rather than be a carbon copy.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Majin. I want to say Ron brought this up earlier today, about who Ron learned things from. Aunts, grandmothers, cousins, that is part of the culture, street dance community. That is about bringing those folks into the space. I was recently taking an African dance class, and the instructor was doing a few moves that I was just like, that was from the 50s. The dance, the particular rhythm that we were learning was from the 50s, but I could see the translation of what was happening today in dance. Now let me say, it's a continuation. It moves, it changes, it does not stop. And we learn from our people, and you have to bring those into the space. You got to bring those people into the space with you. You don't do it by yourself. You don't do it alone. Someone taught you something to move for that. And so I just want to bring that into the space also, is that part of the culture and the dance is like, you have learned from somebody. And I don't mean, as Mike said, not in front of a mirror, not a 5, 6, 7, 8. You were just dancing and you just learned. You picked up what it was, be it if you were a baby, if you were a teenager, wherever you picked it up from. So I just want to bring that into the space. And I know that there are people that are watching that teach these choreo classes and these hip hop classes. And again, this is just about you making sure that you are checking yourself, listening to Black folks and checking yourself. It's time out for you thinking Black people don't know what they're talking about when they're talking about culture that was birthed from them. So, and the other thing is, someone said this comment, part of that education is that you see their Cash Apps, their Venmos, their PayPal, they're educating you. Drop them some coin for this education, okay? Yes, they are getting paid. Yes, I'm making sure that they're getting paid, but you can also. Because this is a lot of work, this is a lot of time, this is what people are passionate about. So if you feel led to give them some money, please give them some money. It goes a long way. There are a lot of white women, there are a lot of Asian folks that teach these classes. What's in my head is, what's missing? What do you think that they're missing? Yes, Ron.
You know, and I want to work this the best way I can, because a few people have kind of touched on it. The thing about hip hop is, and before I even get into this, in the Black and brown household, I know y'all have heard this before, everybody got to have a job and everybody got to contribute. Okay. So that idea is that anybody living under this roof can have whatever they need to have that's in this house, because there is the expectation that you are also contributing something to the house, right? And when it comes to hip hop, I feel like the thing that's missing is we have a lot of people that come to the house and take. They take style, they take money, they take jobs, they take and take and take and take. And then they take so much to the point of, I don't even know who you are in this space because you have taken away everything that was me. So the
Yes.
bit that's missing is who are you? I wouldn't necessarily mind so much if you came into this house and you borrowed movement and we exchanged, because the essence of hip hop is that exchange, right? That's how we learn. But when you come into the house and you take and you don't put back, that's missing. You know what I mean? Like, if you grew up as, and this is not a personal attack, I'm just using this as an example. If you grew up in a traditionally Vietnamese household and that's what you did, well, then, goddamn it, I want to see that in whatever hip hop you bring in. Bring you so that I understand who you are and that you're contributing to this thing. So that way, when we are exchanging and we're borrowing, it doesn't feel like you're taking everything away from me. Now I feel like I have something and I know something about you. And then that makes our exchange more relevant and that makes our exchange more meaningful. What's missing is the fact that everybody is borrowing clothes and ain't nobody got shit else to borrow. Sorry.
I wanted to tap into this comment from Venus. How has making a class plan hindered or helped you in class structure? And I want to talk about that for a second. Because I work at a university, I have to make a class plan. I have to do all of these things. A syllabi, I have to make all of these things. And what I found is that my experience as a Black person in dance, and talk about street dance, I don't go out to the club and I don't dance with my friends structuring what I'm going to do. We just show up. And so I think that's a Eurocentric way of thinking about it. And again, it's taking the actual freedom of expression. It's taking yourself out of the culture when you have to plan what you're going to do. And I understand the question. So it's not, I teach at a university. I teach, so I understand the idea of structure and needing that to happen. But also the idea of just like to be involved in culture does not necessarily mean that even if I'm teaching it, I don't have to go in with a plan. My plan that day is that if I feel like we just need to walk across the floor and just bop to some music, then we just gonna walk across the floor and bop to some music because that is what I'm feeling. And that is an exchange, and that is so valid. If we are just dancing in front of each other and we just following each other, someone Naomi mentioned like mirror reflection and cipher reflection and that type of thing. So the idea of like trying to have this perfect idea of teaching Blackness, it just ain't gonna work. Like, if you're going to teach the culture, then teach the culture. If you're not, you're not. And it's okay. It is all okay. If you need a structure, it is okay. But the idea of like saying, I have to come in with this class plan to make sure people get it. The most beautiful part about teaching, especially these styles, is just like if people walk out, for me, respecting Black and Latinx folks. That's number one. That's the most beautiful part about teaching. And then an understanding of what Ron said, what are they putting in instead of just taking away? So Naomi, I know you had some comments to make. Let's bring you on.
Yeah, I just want to really give props for breaking it down about that whole, actually, just coming in as a hip hop, someone who's in hip hop. Danny, I feel like just broke it down that like actually hip hop doesn't really need the academy. The academy needs hip hop because hip hop doesn't have to rely on this kind of papers and institutional processes and all that kind of thing, because we improvise. Like, we come in and we take what's there, we take the conversation that's in the room and we act activate it. That's what hip hop does. It activates what's in the space. It doesn't come in and try to control and dominate and fit the space into its needs. That's a very white way of doing things, you know? So just wanted to, give snaps for that. I just wanted to briefly address the other question about, you know, the Asian American experience in hip hop. There's a lot of things I can kind of say about that. You know, I come from being a child of a Filipino immigrant. My mother came to the United States when she was already an adult, and you know, and then also my father is also, you know, from an immigrant experience and is Jewish, you know, and so I didn't really get raised in whatever is supposed to be the standard, you know, standard American household, and you know, I feel like for a lot of Asian folks, when they come to this country, whether they're first or second or third generation, they are contending with racism, right? They're contending with a racial structure in which they are being told that they need to fit into that structure, and basically often try to, there's a lot of pressure to whiten your experience and to imagine yourself. That's what assimilation is all about. It's to be totally surrounded by whiteness and then to have to basically weed out everything that's not white. I do think that blackface performance comes from that, because it's a way of enacting, you know, the power structure and saying, well, I like to act black because I don't have to actually be black. So as long as I can act black, I can show how much closer I am to whiteness. So I feel like, you know, it's important for us within the Asian and Asian American communities, and this may apply to other communities, I'm just going to speak right now on Asian American, you know, is that to understand that our history has been erased. And sometimes because of that feeling of erasure and lack, it's like, okay, I now take on this other experience so that I have some way to identify and feel like belonging, feel like, you know, I am heard, I am seen, you know,
Yes.
like I can fit whatever, that there's various reasons for it, you know, but basically it is often a result of assimilation and this refusal to acknowledge and actually value, you know, other experiences. And yeah, that's basically, I just wanted to say that, because it's not just about saying, oh, you did this wrong, or you shouldn't be teaching, or, you know, any of that. It's to say, look to yourself and learn who you are, and know that that is really like there's something valuable in yourself. And hip hop actually is here as a vehicle to teach you to come closer to that. You know, but only you can do that work.
Thank you, Naomi. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It's so okay. Sylvia and Will need to talk. Takia. Okay, y'all Taqueets. Y'all, I'm saying, you know, the government name. Taqueets. Sylvia will go, then Taqueets. Okay, this is like getting me on fire right now.
I just wanted to add to the question you asked earlier of like, what do we feel?
Uh-oh. You know, that happens sometimes. They will be back with us. Give us a second. Taqueets, let's have you go, and then they will come back with us.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to just generally all of the questions that have just happened. You know, I feel like I'm the only one in this group that doesn't teach, you know, so I just wanted to kind of speak to that. And you know, I grew up when I was a kid. My mom put me in tap, she put me in ballet so that I would have something to do. But also, you know, given those experiences, I learned a lot about my own culture. And so, you know, as I grew up in dance, kind of learning and just sort of like naturally becoming more inclined to movement that wasn't necessarily so traditional. You know, I always felt as though I had a connection, you know, not necessarily to like hip hop, but to, you know, Black culture, what Black and brown culture is, that the culture that birthed hip hop, what it is to be able to speak with your body, you know. And so just given that, I've always known how powerful it was and how worthy it is of its own, you know, lexicon. It doesn't have to be accepted by contemporary ballet, modern, you know, interpretive, you know, institutions of movement. It is its own thing, and what it came from is so beautiful, you know. And just knowing the value of that, and growing up in Seattle, you know, which is one of the whitest cities that you could ever grow up in. Trying to find your Blackness, knowing what this is, and not wanting to give it away. I've had many people ask me. I've been, had a career for 10 plus years here in the city to teach. I want to do what you do. And it's like, you can't do what I do because I didn't learn this. I learned, obviously from my experience and growing up. And, like you said, being at mom's house, the parents were like, go do that dance. You know what I mean? That's sort of like your first cipher, really, when you're a kid. And growing up in that experience, and knowing the beauty of what that is, and it comes over time. You know what I mean? You can't learn this in 6 weeks. You can't learn this in an intensive. I don't want to give it away. I don't, because I know the potential for it being misused. I know the potential for it biting me in the ass. And so just, coming from that sort of perspective, I just wanted to say that. And then, given the fact, like, once again, like we're talking about, POC, representation in hip hop, and Naomi, I love what you said about, the assimilation factor with regard to, a lot of our Asian brothers and sisters learning about hip hop and finding their own space in the hip hop movement, and, what that means. How does that evolve? How do you bring more of yourself from that space? You know what I mean? Like, how do we evolve that? Right. And so I think that's definitely a very important conversation that we need to be having culturally, with regard to what hip hop is and where it came from and where it can go. I want to make sure that, because it started in the 80s, started in the 70s and 80s. Like, the people that founded this are still very much alive. We can talk to them. We can learn from them still. And so let's be mindful of that. It's not just something that's like, well, I don't know where this came from. Like, we know exactly where all of these things came from. So everybody who is gaining from it, who has access to it, who's using it to further their own careers and their own lives and their own, understandings of themselves, should also very much be doing the work of knowing the history, and I feel like the more you know about it, the less you want to use it in the way that it's being used. I think, like, if you know, like, the real struggle that birthed hip hop, if you know the conditions that those people lived in, that made this thing, you wouldn't want to treat it the way that it's being treated. You want to amplify those people. You want to, like, this is your thing. Please have this back. I don't want to take anything from you because I know what it took for you to make this thing. So that's my bit.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I want to go back to Sylvia and then Naomi, and then I want to transition to another topic or question. But Sylvia, let's bring you back.
Hi, sorry, we lost internet connection there. But so I wanted to talk a little bit about what was missing, especially in the Seattle hip hop dance community. And if I'm being, like, very frank and honest, I feel like Black and brown people are missing, because I feel like we can talk about, like, bringing the individuality, we can talk about bringing your authentic self, we can talk about exchange, but I feel like at the end of the day, they're just going to go and do this with themselves, and there still won't be any Black or brown people in the room, and that's where it's coming from. So it's, I don't know, I feel like at the crux of it, especially in Seattle, like, I can't tell you how many hip hop classes I've walked into with no Black or brown people. That's crazy, crazy. And so, like, I don't know, I feel like something has to change, because it's not like we're not out here. Right. We're all out here. Right. We all dance. We see each other at the club. We go, like, cypher session. It's just, I feel like in the structures that are being set up right now, Black and brown people aren't present. And I feel like, can you really have hip hop without the people that it's coming from, without the culture it's coming from? And to me, the answer is no. I don't think it's possible.
Thank you. Naomi, you wanted to bring something into the room.
I didn't actually.
Oh.
I wanted to go off of what Taquit was saying, just that there is this program based in the UK called, I believe it's, I don't remember where in the UK, it's called Urban Strides, and they're still teaching a 10-day street dance teacher qualification program. They've been doing this for years. Actually, I've been kind of following them. I check in to see if they haven't yet been taken offline. But
Wow.
you know, it's just how do you teach how to teach street dance in 10 days? It's but you know, I also just want to really go to what Sylvia had just spoken about. And I guess I want to take a different tack on the conversation. And I don't know, I actually feel this is a conversation I don't even want to have online. I feel like it's a conversation that like folks need to have amongst themselves, you know, to an extent. And I do feel what I want to, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like hip hop is here. It's like that whole thing with gentrification where it's just like, oh, you know, there's no more, you know, people of color here. But it's like, no, you know what? Yeah, there is a change, but folks, we're still here. You know, we haven't been erased, and hip hop still lives, and it's still being generated. Like Sylvia, like you said, it's in the clubs, it's in the cyphers, it's on the streets, at home. You know, and I feel like it's in those intimate spaces that we can create those sort of real transformations. We don't need these institutions. I just want to say that, like, I don't want to come from a lack mindset, because that's what capitalism wants us to do. Capitalism wants us to feel like we don't have, and so we need to have. But we have something that's very rich. And I feel like these institutions are not made for us. They are not made, they're working fine because they're working to take, and they're working to objectify and capitalize and commodify all of that, you know? So we build our own institutions, we create our own spaces. I'm not saying it's easy, that we don't have to do a lot of there's a lot of struggle. You know, I've seen friends who have done some incredible, like, you know, put up like their street dance studio in the, you know, and then it gets shut down because folks can't pay the bills or whatever. I get that there are these other struggles, but let's be creative and let's go beyond having to fit ourselves into the institution. Let's make our own institutions. You know what I'm saying? Let's make our own programs, our own curricula.
Thank you. I also wanna like, with what Sylvia and Naomi said, of just the most connected I have been to community is not at a battle, not at a class, not at a performance. I think Naomi and I were talking about that time at NAMM. We went to some event at NAMM, and like the dance floor was on fire. Like it was just one of those things. We did a performance at, what was it? Sculpture Park. And I think Ron might, that was on fire. Will, like, we just shut the park down. Like, let's just be real. Like, we shut it down because we were in community with each other. So these things about the classes, what's missing is that we're not in the classes needing that culture, needing that experience. We need to be in the streets. We need to run into each other at an event and just create our ciphers and dance. That is where I personally get the most out of everything. And then another thing, especially with classes, there was someone in Korea, I can't believe it, a group that were advertising classes, and they were talking about R&B moves. I've never done an R&B move. I'm Black. I've been Black my entire life. $250. You can learn R&B moves. Again, it's real. It's real. I sent them a message and was like, what in the hell are y'all talking about? And they never responded back. Like, a lot of people jumped on it. I forgot who it was. But again, sorry, choking, folks. You can't put a price tag on Blackness. And then R&B, let's break that down. Rhythm and blues. The question is, you just want the rhythm. You don't want the blues. Because if you had the blues, you would not be able to survive.
Amen. Come on, child.
So you teaching R&B moves. You just need to be teaching our moves, not the B, because you don't want that part about it. I want to transition because we are running time, and I want to talk about something that's really important to me: the lack of Black women in these spaces, the lack of Black femmes, the lack of, in the battle scene, the actual lack of queer representation of Blackness. Unless it's Vogue, unless it's something like that. But when it comes down to what we consider street and hip hop dance, we know women bodies, femme bodies, non-binary bodies, Black bodies, these representations are inside of the culture. And especially in Seattle, there is a lack of. But then I see an abundance of imitating what we think Black women are. So I'm just going to throw it up in the air and somebody catch it. It's not even a question. Go to Queens. I'm just throwing it up and somebody catch it.
And then, I just want to say real quick, as a Black woman who is queer, who is a dancer, born and raised in Seattle, you know, that's it. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. And I'm just from the Seattle scene. Like, there is not a lot of us. And I've had experience where I've gone to hip hop nights, I've gone to break nights, and I've tried to get in ciphers, and I know what I can do, right? And have you ever like been in a conversation with a bunch of people and they're talking, and you try to add to the conversation and no one feeds you back?
Mm-hmm.
What am I supposed to do with that, right? You know, and these folks are like, they're breaking, they're doing hip hop, they're doing all these things. I'm like, okay, I want to get in, I want to converse, I want to, you know, speak the language because this is my language, right? And I get nothing back, you know. So what do I do with that? So I just, you know, I keep to myself most of the time, you know. And I think it's sad, but at the same time, what is meant to be will be. So yeah, that has definitely been my experience. And I think the lack of Black women in the scene definitely comes from power structure. Our proximity to the truth, I think, is the reason why we are not at the table. I think if we were in the position we were supposed to be in, a lot of other people wouldn't be here. Yeah.
Can I ask Taqui, and maybe also Sylvia, because I feel like you said that you used to live in New York, maybe. I'm just wondering if that's specific to Seattle, but like, but you don't see that. I mean, I feel like my experience hasn't been of Black women being out of the scene in other areas, but I would love to hear what you all think.
Yeah, I'm speaking specifically to Seattle. I've been here most of my life. I spent some time in New York going to college, and I've been in a couple cities here and there. Very little, but I've been on the Seattle scene my whole life. So yeah.
I would just add to that. I think I've felt it the most in Seattle out of everywhere I've lived. Like, I do think that it's true to an extent. Like when I was in the Atlanta dance scene and even in New Jersey, New York, I feel like there are people, like I could always find at least like a small enough group that I'm like connected to, and I'm like, all right, cool, I found my people. Seattle, I don't know. There's like, it feels like either it's more disjointed or there's just really like a lot less numbers, and I don't know.
Hello?
That's me being on mute, trying to be polite. That's me being on mute, trying to be polite. Ron, next. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to try to make this concise, and I want to be sure that I'm speaking to Seattle in particular. The lack of Black women and representation really is laziness, and nothing other than laziness. I personally know so many dope Black women in Seattle that are not only teachers, but have resumes that will eat your food. Okay. And I mean, we talking about people like Nakia Dunmore, Keisha Vaughn, Juliana Patterson, you know, my own sister Seal. Makia Chantel, there are so many dope Black girls that are in Seattle. But the excuse that I hear a lot is, oh, I don't know any, or, oh, you know, I don't know, or I don't know where to find them. And it's like, you don't find them because you're not looking, because they're there. And if you even just looked, even just a little bit, you would see that they're there. And then in times when they are there, I don't always feel like they get the same push and that they get the same accommodations that non-Black women have. Like, they class will be at like 2:30 on a Sunday when nobody is going to be there, when it could be on a Thursday night, 7 o'clock prime time slot, when somebody could really show up and get what is needed. And I just feel like overall, Black women in Seattle, when it comes to dance, get the short end of the stick, despite being the most qualified to be able to teach.
Let's just go down that list. All of that, Ron, just all of that. I want to add to that list the power that Black women hold in space intimidates a lot of people, even men, even Black men that hold most of the space in the hip hop dance scene. Straight Black men who hold, let me just again call it what it is. And it's not about knocking, it's about checking yourself. So before you check us, check yourself, because the lack of Black women, femme representation is because your egos cannot handle the power of Black women in spaces. For the white women and the Asian women that take up these spaces, and when Black women come in, understand that there's ways that you do throw shade at Black women. There are ways that you don't support Black women in those spaces. Everything that everyone has just said is exactly the thing. And for me, I just want to call it what it is: the hiring practices of Black women. Like Ron just said it all, like those things, and understanding your issues with Black women and femmes. Understanding that myself, I'm a queer dancer who dances house, and then I have to, and I don't do this anymore, I felt myself posturing up like a cis man. House dance started in gay clubs, gay Black and Latin clubs. So it's this idea of like, what are you actually doing to make the space more welcoming to these individuals? And so I find Black women saying like, screw that, I'm about to go do something else. I'm about to move here. I'm about to do this. I'm about to do these other things, or I'm about to go down a different track that not even come involved in the scene. It's not that you don't know them. You don't want them in the space, because then it takes away from you. And then we have to call out a lot of Black men who don't support Black women in these spaces. Like, you should be wanting these Black women, femmes, trans women, all these folks to come into these spaces and not over-sexualize their bodies, not treat them like they don't know how to move their bodies, because they didn't taught yourself what to do. So it is all of these things. Again, the conversation is not about me, but I just wanted to add in, like, as we're having these conversations, I need folks to think about what it is that they are doing in spaces to not make these spaces open and welcoming. Don't invite people like a Randy Ford in to make your event exciting because she's a Black trans woman. Bring her in because she's just dope as fuck. Like, that's it. And then support her in the space. And other Black trans women, other queer body people. Don't expect this thing to happen. So again, I'm going off on a tangent. With the lack of Black women in these spaces, how does that change the environment for a lot of you all? And for, if you are, we have 2 Black women on the panel, how does that make the environments like go like, ugh, like, do you feel some type of way? And I'm talking about either classes, battles, performances, any of that type of thing, auditions or that. How does that shift the environment for you all?
I will just say I'm very, very intentional about the jobs and spaces, the jobs that I take in the spaces that I inhabit when it comes to what I do. And most of the times, the places where I feel most safe is around other Black queer women or around other Black and brown queer women. you know, Simone Penn Productions, the Earth Pro Collective, Boom Boom LaRue, you know, Late Night Review. Those are the spaces where I felt the most safe. Showing out is where I felt the most safe. It's where I felt as though I could really bring myself fully, you know, to the thing that we were trying to do. Any other time, you know, it is what it is. I know what I'm worth is the thing about it. You know, I know what I bring to the table. And I know how powerful that is. And so, you know, if I'm not supposed to be there, then I ain't gonna be there. And it's not about a check for me, because this is bigger than money.
Right.
So that's been my experience.
Sylvia, before you jump in, I want to bring up these comments from Angelica. So with that, what are we supposed to do? And as a Black woman, how should I feel? And my simple answer is like, I don't know. Like, a lot of times I feel like it's up to Black people to come up with the solutions when we didn't create the problem, especially if you are a Black woman. Like, it is not up for you as Black women. And again, I'm not trying to tell Black women, but honestly, it's not up for Black women to fix the thing that they didn't create. If you love and support Black women, then you welcome into the space with no questions asked. You welcome all of parts of Black women into a space. Black trans women, Black femmes, Black non-binary people, Black queer folks. Like, you welcome them into the space. You move out of the way so that they can get their shine. You cannot compete with a Black woman. My opinion, Danny Terrell does not reflect the views of the panel. This is my opinion. You cannot. So it's that thing of like, yeah, I don't know what the answer is. The best answer is like, we've got to make it better for you all. And this is not about savior and trying to save, and it's not the horse knight in shining armor thing. It's just about, we're creating the problems for Black queer folks, Black trans folks, Black femmes, Black women. So we have to make it a priority to make sure we don't perpetuate the problem. Sylvia, go ahead if you have something to add. Definitely want to get your voice in.
Yeah, I was just gonna add. So I'm not gonna lie, I tried to fit into like that whole like culture and group of like hip hop dance that wasn't really driven by Black people, and it's very draining. Like it's a lot. It's like, it's very exhausting. And I think like, honestly, I just hit a point where I was like, Taquit's kind of touched on this, but I know what I'm worth. And I know that it's not worth my time to put myself in those situations. And it's not worth my time to like try and prove. I don't even know. I don't even know what they kind of expect. But I was like, whatever it is, it's too much for me. So I feel like out of that, just like finding the different pockets of people that you can commune with and that you can dance with. And so that's honestly how I ended up dancing with the Purple Lemonade. And I've been dancing with Makia this past month, and that has been really dope, just being surrounded by Black women and like just feeling like the language that you have always known isn't foreign to you, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like a lot of times being in the other class spaces, you start to feel like, wait a minute, I thought I knew this and I thought this was a part of me, but like this feels strange. This feels weird. This doesn't feel like what I know. And so I don't know. It's definitely draining and exhausting, and I've had to step away.
And one of the most interesting thing when I go to like, you know, and I go to performances or just going out to the club and I see non-Black women dancing, and again they are Black facing Black women, everyone goes up for them. And I'm just like, you understand where they got that from, but you won't go up for a Black woman who's actually giving you what the thing is supposed to be, but you are definitely going up for this watered down version of the thing. And again, if you are getting offended, check yourself, don't check me. Like, this is where I stand for Black women, so I'm going to stand and I'm not going to be moved any other way. You have to understand, what are you doing not to make Black women welcome? Ron, go.
Danny, I got to, because it's been killing me. This, I think it translates, because we've spoken a lot about the teacher and the performance level, but I think it also translates to a student level. So, for example, how me and Sylvia came to know each other. I was observing somebody else's class, wasn't even my class. And in that class, they calling up everybody else And no disrespect to none of these people dancing, but they wasn't killing it like Sylvia was. And I literally had to go into the class and I was like, yo, I want to see her do the movement. Because when you saw Sylvia do the movement, it was like, oh, that's what that's supposed to look like. That's how that's supposed to feel. And I think a lot of times, even Black teachers sometimes, a lot of times when we see the non-Black person doing the Black movement, we quick to hype them up. Like, yeah, that's so bomb. Yeah, that's bomb. We don't understand, how are they doing it? Well, anybody, and a lot of people try to mimic Blackness. We've seen that. We have examples of that. But we do not highlight students or our Black students. We don't give them the space. And especially Black girls, we never give them the space to be like, oh, yeah, she's dope at what she's doing, because you're like, oh, well, she a Black girl. She's supposed to be doing it. No, she's dope. That's why she's doing it. And I think that problem, because we don't hype our students up and we don't live for the Black girls on a student level, that translates to the respect on a teacher and on a performer and on an academic level, to the point of it's like, it just is weird to me that we just don't support that way. So I'm sorry.
Exactly. Thank you, Ryan. Anybody else want to jump in to Queets? Yes.
I just wanted to say real quick to the student part of it, from personal experience. So I took classes at Spectrum when I was 4 years old. I got kicked out of Spectrum because I didn't fit the mold. Mm-hmm. And what was happening was I was learning things too fast and I would get bored. So that was my personal lived experience in a like one of my first, and I was 4, So that sort of mentality is being ingrained in young Black women from a very early age also. But when it comes to having to learn or relearn your worth and knowing what you're capable of, I'm 33 now, right? So it takes a long time to regain that self-confidence in what it is that you do. So it's very important, like Ron was saying, with regard to Black women and Black girls in these performances and in these educational spaces with regard to dance, to be able to, we really have to amplify, because we're not being amplified in the magnitude that we should be.
Right. I'm going to say this, Angelica, you made a comment. Don't ever apologize if it's a Danny Terrell event as a Black woman about saying stuff. You ain't got to apologize to me, because you say what you need to say, because the spaces I try to build are for Black women to have their voices heard. So it ain't an issue with me. And I don't think it's an issue with anyone on the panel. So you don't ever have to apologize. I wanted to, again, we are not touching on everything because we just possibly can't in this time that we have. But these are some of the things that were on my mind. I also want to open it up if there's any questions that anyone in the viewing audience has for the panelists. You can put those questions in the chat. Panelists, any thoughts, any other things that you want to talk about, like the battle scene? We can dive into that for a second. There is a huge battle scene in Seattle, and I'm sure it's battle scenes all over the place. But it's just a turnoff for me. Again, there's a lot of posturing. There's a lot of like pissing contest. There's a lot of people talking about community and culture, and they are completely, in my opinion, missing the point. Not to say battles are not important, but everything does not need to be a battle. I'm not going to battle another Black person about my greatness, and I'm not going to battle them about their greatness. So think about that as you're in the battle scene. So anybody want to touch on that? Will, Mike, Ron, anybody? Naomi, Taquise? Taquise is like, yes, y'all. Taquise, go Taquise. We just gonna go through the panel. Taquise, go first.
Can I just say, I feel so affirmed by this conversation. Everything that we're talking about, everything that I'm hearing from the people on this panel is my experience. And I'm so glad, because like Ron, Majin, Danny, we've had experiences kind of, through the scene a little bit. Right. But I'm just meeting Naomi and Sylvia and Will, And just to like learn from you guys through all of this is just like, man, I feel seen, you know? So I just wanted to say that first off. What was the question? I'm sorry.
It was just like battle scene.
Oh, the battle scene. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. That
would be the greatest in Blackness.
Man, and exactly what you said, Danny. This is not a debate. This is not a competition. It's not a better than. We're conversing. And those are my favorite battles. You know, if you you're watching a good battle when you see people speaking to each other. You know, they're bouncing off of one another. They're not pulling tricks that they had, you know what I mean, in the pocket for however many months, you know, and that's cool too. That's, you know, that's fun. That's kill-offs. We love all that stuff. But at the same time, my favorite battles as a dancer, as a freestyler, are the ones where I see people talking to each other. And then at the end, they hug it out, you know, and it's love. That's real. That's hip hop.
I'm gonna say this, at University of Washington, that's where I teach. Mike and I, like, we do a lot of ciphers within our classes, and I have shut so many people down because they go into battle mode, and I'm like, nope, get out my cipher real quick, because I'm just like, where's the conversation at? And again, what you just said is like, it's a conversation. The minute you start doing tricks and you trying to wow the crowd, I shut it down immediately. I was like, nope, and they look so defeated. And then eventually through the semester, they get it and they understand. And I think Ron said this earlier, they start to bring themselves, they start to add to and not take away. And so that thing, I like that this keeps coming up, like the idea of like, you got to add yourself. Anybody, we just going through the panel. Ron, we'll go.
Yeah, I'll keep mine brief. But just touching on that same topic, like the idea of battles and ciphers and all of this stuff, like it all started as an exchange. Like that's literally what it was. It was just like people, boom, boom, boom. And then they would like, it was a conversation. Even when I learned ciphering, like that's how I learned it. It was not supposed to be a winner loser so much as it was supposed to be like, what do you have to say? Okay, here's what I have to say to that. And then everyone else gets to like, so yeah, I completely agree. Like where battles have gone to, especially in Seattle, and on multiple levels, on levels of like lack of Black representation, lack of queer representation, and then across to like even how they're battling. You're like, whoa, like you about to fight? Like what's going on? It's a dance. It's an exchange. So yeah, I completely agree with that statement.
Right. Let's go with Ron, Majin, Naomi, then Sylvia. If people have comments.
Yeah. I can't really speak too much on the battle scene in Seattle because I was always turned off by it. It's just not for me. But I will say this. Battling is not bad. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
From my point, like y'all know me, I'm in the ballroom. Okay. The ballroom is the battle. That's what it is. But once that category is done, all the people kiss cheeks, you know, it be hate amongst the houses, but you kiss cheeks. And what that battle really was, even in the ballroom, and even when you think of early hip hop, the battle wasn't to be like, it wasn't ownership, like I'm the best one and I own all of it. The battle was, yo, this person was really nice at this thing. And then you wanted to go and learn from them. So it was less about, I'm winning because I own this thing, okay? And it always felt like battling, especially in Seattle, was this thing of, oh, if I won, then that means I have ownership and complete mastery of this thing. And now I get to, now I get to say that this is it, and anybody else who doesn't look like me ain't it now. And it's like, no, that's not what it was. That's never what it was meant to be. Even just battling was a, hey, this is what I have to offer, never what I have to own. And I feel like now as we start to get into battling and the competition scene, it has all of these different rules and structure, not even structure. It just has all of this extra that has nothing to do with the exchange that you're trying to give to a person. And it really makes it so like, I don't want to be a part of it. Because like, as y'all know, Black people, we dance at home. You know, that's how we learned to dance. You know, my sister in the next room came in here and did a dance. I guess I taught her 10 years ago. Okay. Because
Right.
that's what we do. So it's like when you put battle and competition and all of that, you really stripping it away from the exchange and from that that thing that we do as Black people that holds us together, and that's communicate and connect.
I'm gonna jump in real quick, and I'm gonna say this. You brought up something really important, Ron. I think when I look at Black folks in the Vogue scene battling each other, it is really about pushing you to your greatness. That is the energy that I feel. Again, I'm not against battles. I was in a battle in New York. I did pretty good, but I was like, battling is not for me. What I'm talking about is this idea of like, I'm going to take your head off. Like the thing that you just said, Ron, like I'm going to be the best. And once I win this thing, I'm the best. What I've seen and again, I'm talking about Black folks in Vogue and battling. It's like, oh, you do this, I'm gonna do this. It's not about one upping you. It's about, I'm going to push you to your best because I only want to be surrounded by the best.
Absolutely. Like you would never go up against somebody that you didn't feel was going to push you. You don't go into that category thinking, oh, I'm just finna eat everybody here. You go into that category hoping, I hope it's somebody here that's going to push me to do something that I never did in my life, you know? Exactly. And that's the expectation, you know?
Right. Mike, Majan, jump in.
So many things that can be said on the battle scene. Agree. I don't dislike the battle scene. Like we were saying, battles can definitely push you to be greater. I don't battle often, but when I do, it's because I need that type of push. Because there's ciphering with people that's going to push you, and then there's battling that's going to push you in a different way. But the only way I can explain how I battle is I'm still battling happy. I'm not coming in to, like you say, to like knock people's heads off, to think I'm the best. I'm like, I'm here to grow and I'm here to have that conversation. I have the same conversation when I'm battling than I do when I'm ciphering. I want to see what you're going to say. I want to respond. And for me, the thing that's always in my head is it doesn't matter if I win or lose, right? Because it's somebody's opinion. Can't nobody's opinion of my dance define my dance. Whereas a lot of the people in the Seattle scene are like, this is going to define my whole life if I win this battle. It's not. Y'all throw battles like 17 times a month. Okay. A lot of people only get together to battle, taking away the community aspect of like, let's go to the club. Like, they're just like, oh, it's a battle. Okay. That's when I'm going to see you. I won't see you again until the next battle. No matter how much front they be like, when they see you, like, oh yeah, we're tight. But you ain't never going to try to chill, cipher, whatever outside of this event. Right. Bringing it back. A lot of the reasons we don't see Black femmes in general, queer folks, is because these spaces like battles are not safe for them. Battle scenes, and again, I'm going to speak because we're talking about Seattle. A lot of this shit is not safe for femmes and queer folks that are here because shit goes down and people won't speak up. They won't like stand up for people. They just let shit go by. And I have many friends like who have gone through this experience that I know, and I'm like, this is why I don't go to battle, because I'm gonna end up fighting folks, and I'm not even a fighter like that. Like, but y'all talk about, oh, this is a community, blah blah blah, but you're excluding all these people because you're homophobic, you're misogynist, you're afraid that you're about to get beat in a battle by a girl, which you probably will. Like, but you want all these people to come through. You want kids to come through when you're being a very toxic space. And that's something that the Seattle scene very little talks about. Stuff will go out on like social media, but there's no actual talks that people are having that I know of where people are trying to like talk about the root of the problem and hold people accountable. Right. And the people that are usually doing it are femmes. And it's like, it's not their job to make this space safe for them. When, again, a lot of people are learning from them, you're taking from them. You want them there, but then you're going to sexualize them, all this stuff like we've talked about. So there's all in all, battling can be very cool. You know, it can have a lot of ups, but in the Seattle scene, from what I see, there's the bad outweighs the good.
Right.
In community, in representation, all of that. It's more hype and clout than it is actual community and trying to build and respect the roots of like having everybody come in, unity, peace, bringing people together. Yeah, that's where I'm gonna stop it, because I'm gonna go on a whole lot. There could be a whole lot.
Yes. Before we close out, does anybody else have any comments on this or anything like that, or anything that they want to say? That's not the final question, but does anyone? And go ahead, Naomi. Yes.
Yeah, just briefly about speaking on the question of like queer folks, you know, within hip hop, street dance, like as a larger scene. I do feel one thing is that, you know, when I think of my experiences of queerness, it's really about like the underground club for me. Like that's often where I find queer space. And for me, that queer space it does not govern how you move. It's not about like, I mean, Vogue is very specific, right? Because it's a deep culture. Like Vogue is a very, very strong culture. And it's all, you know, it's like families, it's like mom, you know, it's like parents, you know, like you have your Vogue, your house mother, right? So it's like it has multiple like valences in life beyond just the party. But I'm just talking about the general gay, queer underground club. It's like, that's a place for folks who can truly be free. And that is not about, I'm doing the moves technically correct. The technical thing is a kind of masculinizing. It's a very and when I say masculine, I say that on purpose, because it doesn't necessarily mean it's being like male bodies or people who identify, you know, as men are the ones. I'm saying it's masculinist to be like, it has to be this way and it can only be that way and it can't ever be. And, you know, the truth is like what we were saying before we started this panel, we were talking offline, just like, this wasn't always called, oh no, Danny, you said it. This wasn't always called hip hop. It wasn't always called house. It wasn't always called whacking, you know, it just was a movement. And I feel like folks that live in queer embodiment, it's like being told, you're already being told by society that your body is wrong. The way you walk through the world is wrong. You know, that you have to stop shaking, you know, switching your hips or whatever it is, you know, you're already. So I feel like for a queer experience, it's all about you. When you dance, you want to be free. You want to be free to move however you want. And no one's going to say everyone's going to say that's beautiful. You know, and so for me, I feel like that's why sometimes hip hop feels like a very straight culture, because it's so much about you need to learn from this master and you need to learn this correctly. And that person's locking wrong. You know, they don't know how to lock. You know, it's a very male egocentric thing. And that's what turns off queer folks a lot of the time. You know, it becomes very unqueer. Let me just put it that way.
If I can piggyback on something you just said, Naomi, that's what turns off queer folks. Yes. I have talked to so many Black queer folks that are just like, I don't see myself in no parts of this. It doesn't feel like home. I mean, I can only even speak to myself. I lived for 15 years in Seattle, and I never felt like there was a space for me within the Seattle hip hop community. You know what I mean? And that was even when I was holding the space as like a teacher. You know, I didn't feel like it was a space for me until I literally created my own space. And then that's when I was like, oh, if I want to wear, you know, 40 inches of hair and still keep this beard and walk my sexy ass all up and down this stage, that's what I'm going to do. Yes. But it's me, you know what I mean? Like, we have to create our own. And then just to go on that, it's like once you create your own, the weird thing is, it's like you create your own and then you see everybody else bite it. And you like, don't you see I was trying to bring myself to this motherfucker yesterday when you hated on it? And now that I've created it, now you want to get in. Ooh, child, I can't. And yeah, I'm sorry. That really resonated with me, this whole feeling of like, you don't even necessarily feel like you belong in spaces that you should belong, because it's like you just don't see no parts of yourself there.
And Sylvia, Will, anybody else before we I just want to make sure everybody have a chance to say what they need to say.
Sorry,
you
what
repeat
you
that
said?
one time? You just said.
I was just saying, Sylvia, Will, if you have
didn't hear
anything that you want to add.
Oh, I think Ron hit it on the head. Like I think that is 100% true. Just people I don't know what it is about the Seattle hip hop community, but it definitely does not feel like home. It doesn't feel like it comes out of the culture. It doesn't feel like, it just feels different, like just weird. And so I completely feel him on creating a separate space. And I'm telling you, that's why for a really long time I only danced with Ron, because I was it was the only space that felt like home. And I think, I don't know, it sucks to say, but I feel like the only solution I'm starting to see is for us to just create our own spaces and kind of remove ourselves from everyone else.
Thank you. I'm going to say this again. Taquit, you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one more time, as a person who is born and raised in this city, the people that, came here, I've been on the scene. It is not. And you're absolutely right. As a person who's been here, it doesn't exist in the ways that it should. And I think obviously it has a lot to do with proximity. I think it has a lot to do with the refinement of American culture, and how things travel across the country. How did we get hip hop over here? If it originated in New York, what was the process of that getting over here? How many times did it change? Did it get stepped on, to end up in Seattle? So I mean, that's just the reality of it. And Seattle is very much a city where you have to leave to get any recognition here. I'm just now kind of getting a little bit, you know what I mean? Just barely, and I've been here my whole life. If I was to go to New York and make a name for myself, or LA and make a name for myself, then Seattle would want to put me on. Then Seattle would want to give me space and give me access. So that's just the name of the game here. That's how Seattle plays.
You ain't never lied. Look how they did Makia. Makia was here that entire time.
Yes.
The entire time she was here. She left and then she blew up, and then everybody was, oh, Makia. That same girl was here 4 years ago trying to teach a class, and y'all was not really going to go mess with the class. So,
right. See,
yeah.
I wanted to bring up,
to go away.
Yes, just Sam's comment. As soon as you create a space, the folks with the power try to take that and run that part. Thank you, Sam, for that. We're going to close out now. This has been, I just do what I'm led to do with the people that are supposed to be doing it. I always find value. These folks I love dearly. Sylvia, we will get to know more of each other. I love these folks dearly in the way that they think. If you are feeling some type of way again about this conversation, please understand that maybe you just not hearing from Black folks. And now that you get to sit down and hear from Black folks and and friends of Black folks, Naomi and friends of Black folks, maybe it's time for you to actually sit down and listen and really think about your practices. Yes, we do not represent every single Black voice in the Seattle hip hop scene. We represent a few voices. You will have different people saying different things in their entry points and the way that they feel about things. Take that. Take the fact that we all have different experiences. These are 6 people with experiences that you need to understand and listen to. Also, you saw their Cash Apps, Venmos, PayPals. They did do some education. Make sure that you pay them for their education. Drop a 10, drop a 20, drop a 30, whatever you got, 100,000, 5,000, whatever you got, just drop it. I will be having more of these conversations. Again, dance and art is so important to me. And not on a surface level, on a deeper level. Dance has saved my life, and I'm probably not the only one that can say that right now. Dance has actually saved my life. So it's extremely important to me. If you want to support future conversations, the goal is to have the next conversation in October. Send me some cash. This is a way for me to also assist with production costs and paying the artists and other things like that. Thank you all for your comments and everything that you have to say. Thank you, Angelica. Thank you, Sherry, Zahara. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. More conversations are to come. You know, I will probably have my ride or die again, Naomi, with me, because it's just, I feel like Naomi and Ron are becoming the regulars, you know, and throwing folks in on the conversation. The final question for the panelists, because y'all know I love this question and I want to end on a high note. And again, I want to say this is not about knocking anybody. If you have practices, continue your practices. Just be thoughtful about what it is that you are doing. Think about the Black people that are not in the space. Think about the Black people that you have learned from. Think about the people that have died and sacrificed for you to be able to do the thing that you're doing right now. That is why these conversations are important. It's not about telling you not to do anything. It's not telling you not to battle, not to teach, but be thoughtful about what it is you're doing. My last conversation, somebody said it. What is your joy? Robert, why you taking Robert, that's not fair. You stealing my shine. So there, Robert said it. What is your joy? Somebody go. They just stealing my shine, Robert. Thanks. Let's start with Naomi. We haven't heard from you in a minute.
My joy is this conversation. I just feel all loving inside and healed for the moment until I hear the next newscast. Sorry, but that's how it goes these days, you know. But no, I am just so very, very deeply grateful to be able to just witness the brilliance, this collective brilliance that we create together. And it kind of feels like, let me tell you what it feels like. It's like when you've been dancing in the club like all night and it's like 6 a.m. and you go to the diner with your friend, and then you start talking about X, Y, and Z. And did you see that fool on the dance floor? And, you know, remember 5 years ago, you know, it reminded me of those days.
Yes. Let's go with Will. Let's go with you next. What is your joy?
My joy is honestly connecting with Black and brown people. Like, you know, quarantine, obviously, I'll be honest, I will keep it funky. I don't care if we stay in quarantine until 2022. I've seen the people I needed to see, and that's it. I'm chilling. But I've learned, like, what is the quote? It's something like, it's not exhausting if you enjoy like seeing the people, right? And so I don't want to just see people in general, but like I really love everyone in this panel, like-minded individuals having conversations like these. Juliana Patterson, yes. Yeah, just like really people. That's my joy.
Awesome. Let's go to Ron next.
Yeah, the last time you asked me this question, I sprung on you that I was moving back home to LA. So my joy is actually being home with my family. I'm literally in my parents' home right now. They are celebrating 30 years of marriage right now, 37 odd years together. And my joy is being with my family, because for a long time, I didn't want to dance. I just was not inspired or anything, but listening to my mom hum her music and sing in the background and being with my sisters and watching my dad try to dance and looking at his old man moves. That's low key kind of dope, but not really, because I would never tell him that. Just being around my family is my joy right now. And I don't think I've ever been happier in my life than being at home with my family right now.
Yes. Mike, let's go with you, Majan.
As everybody is saying, this conversation, very much needed. I've been feeling productive as of late, which has not happened since like I'd say before quarantine. Just very much needed a break. And then of course everything that happened in the world and is still happening in the world. So being able to feel productive again and wanting to move in my body has been very, very good and joyful. And as always, doing anything with you, Danny, is part of that.
Let's go with, I don't know who to go with next. We got two dope Black women that's going to round this conversation out. Let's go with Sylvia.
Yeah. So my joy, it kind of piggybacks off of what Will said, but just connecting with the right people and meeting new people who kind of add to my energy and don't take away from it. And I think that's something that I definitely learned over quarantine. Just like, you know, we don't have to be around people, and like I love people, but at the same time, I like my peace, I like my space, and I think it has given me much joy to just separate and focus on the right people and the people who kind of feed my energy.
Awesome. Thank you. To Queets.
I'm going to pretty much second everything everyone said. Definitely this conversation. It's been really enriching and a great way to start my vacation. I'm actually on vacation right now, finally. I don't know if y'all seen, I've been pretty busy lately, not on the dance scene, but on the art scene. I was a part of the Black Lives Matter mural that happened here in Seattle. I organized that. And I'm also now the artist in residency, the first artist in residency for the Seattle waterfront. So
yes,
I'm a little busy right now, so I'm taking vacation. But my joy is definitely this conversation. And also want to say about a month or so ago, I had my nieces. I've got to see my nieces for the first time since Thanksgiving because of the quarantine. And they came to my house. And I got to watch The Wiz with my nieces and my mom.
Yay.
The whole time. So that is my joy.
That is so beautiful. Thank y'all. And nobody on this panel is above reproach. And I believe everyone on this panel is doing the work that they need to do. Excuse me, to just be better human beings and better artists and adding to the community. So I thank each and every one of you on the panel. Again, if you feel the need to drop them some coins, so they can, you know, stay in quarantine and be fed or pay a bill, pay a rent, you know, buy some new dance clothes. I don't know, whatever they need to do. If you want to support more conversations, please do. Hopefully October we'll have more conversations. And I just thank you all for doing this. Please seek out these artists just to talk to them. Don't necessarily have to ask them to do something to come work for you. Just seek them out. If you want to find out more about them, find out more about the way that their brains work. The beautiful part is about talking to dancers, talking to artists in general, because you will get a whole bunch of things that you never would have expected. So that's all I have to say. No, Mike, I'm not going to answer that question. What is my joy? Because I know that's what you was going to say, and I know that was on your mind, because I work with you too dang well. I work with you too often, so I know what you was going to say. I'm going to leave it on that note, and we will look out for more conversations. I thank you all for tuning in. Majin, Naomi, Sylvia, Will, Ron, Taqueets, thank you for spending your vacation, first day vacation with us. You could have said no, but I do appreciate that. And look for more conversations. I hope y'all have a really beautiful rest of your night, and we will talk to y'all later. Bye, everybody.